ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Monday. Glad to have you for a fun week of broadcasting as we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And we'll no doubt have some fun doing it. We're going to question the assumptions. We are going to throw in a little sarcasm. We're going to have some fun. We're going to watch for the garbage, the evangelical garbage. We're going to try to be 100% biblical. We're going to have a nice tie on every day. And we're going to greet you with a smile. How's that? Can't beat that, can you? So here we are, and ready to go from Taos, New Mexico, to across America and around the world. Welcome today. Hey, just a programming note, we will be on all week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not Friday. I've got a tree cutter coming that I've got to be there for, to take down 3 big trees, tall pines, firs, I think these actually are, some tall fir trees, and get those down so that they don't blow down someday and land on the house. So, there it is. But the rest of the week, I'll be here. Clean my desk off there. And we've got the evening. We got Wednesday night. We got Thursday night. We'll do well. Okay, what's on your mind today? If you have a question, put the word question first if you're watching in the live broadcast, or you can go to asktheologian.com and submit your question 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've got some good questions here today. And let's see, I said I was going to start, I believe it was, I gotta back up, had some good, had a lot of questions come in over the weekend here. Let's see, where did I leave off? I'm pretty sure it was with Manny, but now I lost him. He's sitting there waiting with bated breath for his question to be answered. It's coming. I just got to go through the weekend worth of questions. Is it? Okay. Well, Manny, I think I lost your question. Sorry about that. I'm gonna keep looking, but let's start with Gerard. How's that? Sorry, we'll find you, Manny. I'm going to start with Gerard. I'm not sure where Gerard is from, but I'm glad you are here with us. And Gerard says, if humans were to cease procreating today, and within no more than 100 years, we can literally end human civilization, doesn't that in itself show that there may not be a God, being that humans can destroy creation? Okay, so yeah, interesting kind of concept. Let's just pretend for a moment, but let's go ahead and put out there that this would be the most foolish pretending that we could do. But let's pretend that humans are not going to procreate anymore. Now, I don't think that even the grandest government program, how do I say this on a family-friendly program? Even the grandest even the grandest government program, religious program, social reform, and education is not going to keep people from doing the whoopee. That's what I think. So first of all, I don't know how you're going to bring that about. It seems like somewhat of a foolish endeavor. But let's say, okay, we cannot have social reform that's going to bring that about. So we'll have sterilization, mass sterilization. Oh yeah, this is not the Gerard in the Netherlands. Sorry about that. I should rightly divide the Gerards. So let's suppose there's mass sterilization. Now that would probably be a more viable concept. And mass sterilization would come about maybe through the food supply, maybe through something they put in the air, maybe through vaccines. Who knows? Mass sterilization. Now, even that is fairly fanciful because you've got to assume that it actually works. So let's go ahead and go with your premise, though. There is a cessation of procreation. Now, but let's be honest, that is a huge mountain to climb to get to that point of a cessation of procreation. But let's go with it just because it's Monday morning, right? There is a cessation of procreation. Okay, you've got, maybe 100 years going out there because, you got a child born today, maybe could live 100 years old. Then we have to assume that the sterilization is permanent even for the children born today. So there's no more procreation ever again. Once again, I don't think we can underestimate how utterly, I'll say, impossible that would be to come up with. In 100 years, they have no scientific breakthroughs to reverse the sterilization process, et cetera, et cetera. But, okay, we're just playing around. Well, I think my point is a moot question gets a moot answer. But doesn't that show that there may not be a God? No. First of all, the fact that God has made that such an utterly difficult premise might say there's a God, but maybe not. But God can determine to bring things to an end today. So we could play this if game. If this, and that happened, all of which are virtually impossible to ever happen, then maybe there's not a God. That seems like a bad gamble to me. I think that I would look at it and say, there is virtually no chance that procreation is going to stop. Virtually no chance. And I even think there's virtually no chance that humanity is going to, even has the ability to end itself. I think with all the technology that we've got today, we could do tremendous destruction, no doubt about it. But could we end ourselves? We worked hard at it during World War II with killing of tens of millions of people, and we didn't even make a dent in things. And the Chinese worked hard at it with the one-child policy. And, now the only problem they've got is enough workers to have around. But really didn't make much of a dent in that either. So I think you're just as good off. Is that good English? You're just as well off to say, if there may not be a God, then there may not be a God. Just go with that one instead of trying to create all the crazy scenarios. Maybe there's not a God. Okay, then pursue that. I'm fine with questioning the assumptions. I don't have a problem with you questioning the assumptions on, is there a God or is there not a God? Has he revealed himself or has he not revealed himself? And to begin to look for the evidence. I am perfectly fine with that. I happen to think that anyone who seriously pursues the evidence is going to find there has to be some explanation for the world, the universe, the cosmos, the humanity as it is now. That no scenario whatsoever that we have ever devised even comes close to satisfying there is a God who did all this. I mean, you've got natural selection, you've got the survival of the fittest, you've got the evolution ideas, and they have so many holes in them that literally even science won't go with them today. They say that's just laughable stuff. There's no evidence for it. So go with the premise, there is not a God. And then, if you're going to be intellectually honest, you will have to say, I've got to figure out somewhere how the eyeball came about. I've got to figure this out. And look for all the scientific reasons, look for all the evolutionary reasons, bring all this together. And I think you just see that to buy into any scientific premise that has been given is far more a leap of faith. In fact, here's what you have to do to make it work. You have to get you a bright green blindfold and put it over your eyes and say, I'm not going to look at the evidence. I am not going to do it because the evidence says that can't happen. So that is more of a leap of blind faith than saying, could there be a God? Is it possible that there is something transcendent beyond us? You know, I think even most agnostics and atheists don't buy the scientific premise. They will go something more like, well, aliens seeded this universe, aliens did it. Whatever they come up with, there is an outside force that did this, because that's what all the evidence speaks for. So rather than saying, no more whoopee, no more babies, no more none of this, and therefore mankind could end itself, and therefore I think that is such a high hill to climb on all the premises that really you come to a moot question there. So I would go at it different. Gerard, who's not the Gerard in the Netherlands, I would go at it different and say, I want to play a game. I want a premise that there is no God. And now I want to come up with an explanation that does not have outside forces working on it. Because whatever that outside force is, that becomes your God. A supernatural power. What is that? And whatever that, if your theology demands one of those, some sort of transcendent, then that's the God. Whether it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, totally different thing. But your theology would bring about the existence of a God. So, yeah, I say deal with the science on it. The real science on it. Now let's go for Steve. I've got a number of Steves, so I'm just going to leave this with Steve. Is the word replenish in Genesis chapter 1:28 and Genesis chapter 9, verse 1, the same word? Let's bring those up. Genesis 1:28 and Genesis 9:1. I believe the answer is yes, but let's take a look here. So God blessed them, said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish. This is the word we're looking for. Replenish the earth. Now, this is right at the beginning of creation with Adam and Eve. And then Genesis 9:1, God blessed Noah and his sons, said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. As a matter of fact, I think fruitful, multiply, and replenish and earth are all the same here. Now, let's see. We've been having a Strong's problem here, but let me see if we get it. Okay, Hebrews number 4390. Strong's word 4390. Let's go over here. And Hebrews 4390. Yes, exactly as I suspected. They are the same word. Now, Steve goes on to say, reason being, in our group study, some say it means to fill. That's different from replenish. Well, yeah, in the way we use replenish, yes, it is. However, the word replenish. Let me see if I'm going to say something and then see if I can back it up. The word replenish. If I can't back it up, I'll go with a different method. The word replenish, I am almost positive, comes to us from the French language. Now, why does that matter? Because within English, words borrowed from French that have the re does not necessarily mean again, but rather it's an intensified form. Let me look at some examples here. Let's go to onelook.com and let's just look for re words. And let's put them according to commonness. Receive, record, recovery, like recovery or recover. Let's just call it recover. Recover does not mean to cover it again. Now, we might use it that way. Hey, I doubt we would even use it that way. Would you recover that cake? What do you mean recover the cake? Well, you took the cover off. Would you recover it? We wouldn't use recover that way. Let's see. What's another? That was a strange reaction you made. No, it's the first action I made. It's not a reaction. It was the first one. A reaction is kind of an intensified action. Let's see. Recognition, cognition, cognizance. I think recognition it's a knowledge word. It's not a re-knowledge word, but now recall. My car had a little recall. Well, they never called it the first time. But now it's got a recall. But then some words, reconstruction. Yeah, we constructed it. We're going to reconstruct it. Looking down at some of these words here. Recurrent. Yeah, it comes again. I think rebuild, obviously that would be a second time. So what you've got in replenish is this is one of those re-words that is an intensified form, like react is an intensified form of act. Replenish is an intensified form of plenire. I think that comes from Latin, which is to fill. Now, just to check that, let's go here to the Oxford English Dictionary and let's put in replenish. And we're going to do the verb here. To stock or supply a place abundantly. I think this is our key word right there. With people or animals, now rare. So in this sense, it is fill, but it's not just fill. It's really fill, replenish. I suppose if we check the etymology here, let's go ahead and put that, borrowing from French, yes. Almost all of the intensified re-words, we borrowed them from French. So I just say blame the French on this one. Because replenish, but sounds like plenish, but the only thing is, I don't think plenish is a word. Is it? Let's look that one up. We do have a plenish. Let's see. Originally and chiefly Scottish. To spread or extend, to fill up land of farmland, to be stocked, obsolete. To fill up or stock, to replenish, now archaic. Okay, to plenish the house. I suspect if you go back, you could find that replenish is an intensification of replenish. So when we come to the passages here, and we've got be fruitful and multiply and replenish, this does not, I don't think this satisfies a desire to strengthen anyone that may have the desire. I don't think it satisfies the desire to strengthen the gap theory. It was plenished, now you need to replenish it. You might be able to build that from connecting some English things that I'm not sure should be connected. Some rewords mean redo it again, like rebuild, build it again. And so plenish is replenish, fill it again. And that's what God told Noah to do, is fill it again. And so this must mean fill it again. So therefore you get to the gap theory, support for the gap theory. I think it's not a robust argument. Let me give you an example, and whichever Steve I've got here, this does not go with it. But because I don't think Steve is probably a flat earther. But I'm in some flat earth groups. I had a couple of friends who were like, come here, we'll convince you, we'll show you. And I did some study on flat earth, several of these flat earth groups. I knock my noggin against a brick wall every time I see these. Because I look at these and say, I look at their argumentation and say, that is not a robust argument. And over again, I say to them, when in those flat earth groups, my most common comment is, use robust argumentation. You're trying to convince people like me, use robust argumentation. What I find in flat earth, by the way, and if you're a flat earther, go ahead and use robust argumentation. What I find is that anytime anyone questions anything, here's the response. Troll. We got a troll, ladies and gentlemen. We got a troll. No, we don't. You just got somebody who disagrees. Deal with the argument. Now, that's totally separate from this right here. I don't think the replenish thing, as in fill up again, would be a robust argument. I would not use that. If I'm trying to support the gap theory, that would not be the one I would use. I would find other things to carry those out. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Steve, wherever you are. I appreciate that. And replenish. That worked out with the other Gerard's question as well, because he was talking about what if we stop plenishing the earth and then a replenish of the earth. Okay, let's go to Ann down in Katy, Texas. Do you think Christians should be buried, cremated, or does it matter? I know you addressed this in one of your sessions, but I can't find it. It is a challenge because that's probably one of those that was addressed, and yet it's not in the title. It's not in the, it's just got in there. I'm sure it was fully related. I'm sure it wasn't chasing a rabbit. But anyway, okay. Should Christians be buried, cremated, or does it matter? I am going to go with ultimately, theologically, it doesn't matter. We are complete in Christ, and our completeness in the eternity is not dependent upon what we decide to do with our body. So, saved by grace through faith, not of yourselves, lest anyone should boast. Even in the care of the remains, whatever happens with the remains. So the ultimate bottom line is it doesn't matter theologically. Now, the question is, does it matter in other ways? I certainly have to say that I am a fan of burial. And here is the reason I'm a fan of burial. I think it gives a better testimony as to the nature and, might I even say, the sanctity of the physical body. So, when we bury, there is almost an inherent sense of we're testifying of the resurrection. It's a seed we're planting. Most Christian cemeteries were designed, especially older, I don't know about new ones, most older Christian cemeteries were designed east and west so that when the body comes up, it will be facing east. Now, that is a testimony to the rapture. Or maybe to the second coming. Maybe it wasn't as pre-trib as I'd like it to be. But it's a testimony to the return of the Lord, who comes out of the east. And therefore, let's not waste any time. When we wake up, the next sight we're going to see, in the physical body, the next sight we're going to see is going to be the resurrected Lord. So there's a little bit of testimony about that. There's a little bit of, you come to this place of, let's call it sacred ground then, that gives you a memory of the deceased and a little testimony of the resurrection. Now, that is a lot more societal, sociological than theological. That's what our society kind of puts in, reads into a burial. Whereas a cremation, to me, it looks a little bit like, done with this thing, don't need it anymore. What do you do with garbage? You burn it. Obviously, I don't think anyone who cremates their loved one or asks for their own cremation is considering that at all. But some people may read it that way, and as a whole, it may come across that way. So I like the Christian tradition of burial. I think it says something. I think it has a little bit of witness, and if I could have a little extra witness at the end, then okay. Now, sometimes burial is not a possibility. Sometimes burial is not a possibility financially because of the tremendous expense that unfortunately now has come to that. I suspect, by the way, that the tremendous expense that comes about that has come about more from government regulation than anything else. I could be wrong there. I'm sure the funeral business has possibly promoted that a bit as well. But burial has become unbelievably expensive. But let's be honest, cremation has become unbelievably expensive. So, you know, in the end, I don't know what's the cost difference. $6,000-$7,000 maybe. I personally, for me, would say if it comes down to literally, there's not the extra, let's go with 7,000. There's not the extra 7,000 to do the burial. Okay, do the cremation. But if we can come up with the $7,000 with inflation under Bidenomics, that's not going to get you very far anyway. A couple tanks of gas. So, stay home for a few days after the funeral, and go for the burial, because I want the Christian testimony that it can give. Again, that is sociological, and I happen to be kind of a traditionalist when it comes to these sociological things. I like a wedding that seems like a wedding, and a funeral that seems like a funeral, and a church service that seems like a church service, and I think there's some testimony to all these things. So there's my answer there. We'll go with there. Okay, Daniel in Colorado. I lost a dog just yesterday. Got out of the yard and struck by a car on a nearby highway. He was a, how do you say that? Catahoula, Newfoundland mix with a one-of-a-kind personality. Really my best friend. That is so very hard. All of us, any of us who have a dog know, except I guess Christy know, know that that's a really hard thing. So our sympathies to you. Was hoping maybe to take him to the Taos Prophecy Conference this fall, 2024. I'll stop right there. Well, first of all, I would love to have you at the Taos Prophecy Conference 2024, last full weekend of September. I do like the concept, though I don't have one right now. I like the concept of a big dog that goes to work with you. He's well trained, he's obedient, all that. That's it's a nice thing. Okay. Anyway, Daniel says, I heard the standard evangelical take on pets a zillion times, and wondering if the scriptures, dispensationally considered and rightly divided, speak to this subject in a way that, say, John MacArthur fails to do. First of all, let me say, I don't know what John MacArthur says about pets, if he says anything. I think that the Bible tells us about the human soul, and to one degree, that's all it tells us. So, with that, we're a little left. The closest you could get to saying there is an afterlife for pets, I think the closest you could get. I'm trying to think if I can come up with any kind of argument here for it. I think the closest you can get is that the scripture speaks of going the way of all the earth. Okay, if all the earth goes that way, then maybe there is. But I think I probably would argue that is it's a bit metaphorical, not literal. Speaking of death, the way of all the earth means dead. And so the problem with using that is you could go then either way with it. Is going the way of all the earth, an eternal existence, or going the way of all the earth is annihilation, just dead? I think that we would have a hard time building a robust argument either way. But personally, my take on it, and I'd be welcome to question the assumptions on this, but my take on it is that God has given us animals to enjoy, and we do. We've got a little crow out here that he comes, and he greets me in the morning, and he wants a cracker. So I give him his cracker. The crow. We call him Clyde. He was here this morning. I fed him his cracker. He was a happy crow. He brings us offerings, puts them in the bird bath. Today was a portion of flesh from, I think, a bird. He gives us meat. We give him crackers. Now, I doubt we'll ever get close to Clyde. But we do get close to some animals. We kind of like them. I would show you the bird cam today, except the power's out up at my house, so I can't do that. I think that that's the purpose that God has given, is we can domesticate these animals, we can train these animals, we can find companionship with these animals, we can have a best friend in these animals, a non-judgmental friend in these animals, a friend we can talk to in these animals, and that therein lies the blessing. And furthermore, the rest of the animal kingdom out there serves its purposes that God has given in terms of the ecology that we live in, the food chain, and the decomposition and everything that we need to make this world work very well. So I would take it as I got a gift from God, not directly in this particular dog, but indirectly, God has given animals. And this particular animal, I really liked. Worked with him, cared for him, and ended it in tragedy. And we do live in this fallen world, and that's unfortunate. And God is always going to provide this kind of companionship, I think. Even into eternity, you've got, the wolf lies down with the lamb. You've got animals there. So I think my personal take on it is we have a gift of the animal world. We should enjoy this gift. It hurts us when we lose some of those, not others, but some of those it does hurt. And so we struggle with that loss just like we would any kind of loss in this fallen world. Someday, death will be no more, and I'm convinced that's the death of the animal world as well. Sorry about your loss there, Daniel. Alex in London. Did Jonah actually die in the belly of the fish and prayed after he died in the belly of the fish? This is this is a difficult one. This is one that seems like, my background anyway, the evangelical background almost always says, no, he didn't die. He was just down there for 3 days. And then when you look at it and you look at the text, oh, wait, maybe he did die in the belly of the fish. What happened while he was there? Let's see if we can put it together here and see what happens from the text. And I'm looking in Jonah. Okay, here we go. Jonah chapter 1, verse 17. The Lord prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. That doesn't tell us whether he's dead or not. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly. Now, do we take the then here to be after the 3 days or when he swallowed? That's kind of open there. I mean, in natural English, we probably would put it 3 days later, after he's been there 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know about you, though. I would start praying sooner, personally. And said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me out of the belly of hell, the grave, cried I, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hast cast me into the deep in the midst of the seas. The flood compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then said I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temples. The water, temple, period. The water compassed me about, even to the soul. The depth closed around about me. The weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came unto thee, unto thine holy temple. They that observe lying vanities forsake, and he goes on. The Lord spake, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. Now, from this, there's some things in there we could say, hey, that is death, but maybe not. This corruption right here, this particular word, corruption, thou hast brought up my life from corruption, that gives the idea of death, because the Lord said, my soul will not see corruption. Speaking from the Psalms, it uses the same word in the Psalm, my soul shall not see corruption. And Jonah says, my life was brought up from corruption, but you could say, just in the nick of time, my soul was brought up as well. And look through that. Now, I've got a series called, do I have a series on Jonah? I think I started to say, I was thinking of another one, The Saving Flood. Let me think back. Do I need to do Jonah? I probably do. There's a few things in the New Testament you can use to say he died and he came back to life. I think that's probably the best argument. If you want Jonah dead, there's going to be the best argument. I wouldn't use, as Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days, so the Son of Man, belly of the earth, I think it said, for 3 days. You couldn't skip it, but I don't know that that's going to prove anything. But then there are some things, and I think when you get into, no, I may be wrong. I was going to say even later on, it gives the idea that he was coughed up onto the sea and there made a resurrection. I'm gonna have to put you on hold, Alex. Logic is he died. And I don't have a problem with that. You do have to put the prayer prior to, or he's dead, he has a resurrection, and then he prays, vomit me out of here. But logic is he died. Can you be in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights and not die? Maybe so, because this is a fish God prepared. So, it's got some air in there, and for whatever reason, less acids than you might expect. God could certainly make it happen, just as God could make a death, burial, and resurrection happen. Is the fact that the Lord uses the death, burial, and resurrection as an example, the death of Jonah as an example of his death, burial, and resurrection, if indeed he does, is that evidence for his death, the death of Jonah? There's some things you could put together to create he actually died in the belly of the fish. But in the end, I think we're going to have to go back and check that out even more deeply. Thanks, Alex in London. Sorry I didn't fully answer your question there, but thanks about that. Scott, down in the hill country of Texas. What do you think about the references to the prince in Ezekiel 44, 45, and 46? He brought me back to the gate. This gate, it's the eastern gate. The gate shall be shut, not opened. No man shall enter. Because the Lord, the God of Israel, hath entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. It is for the prince. The prince, he shall sit in it to eat bread before the Lord. He shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the same. And so it speaks of the prince there. And then that's the beginning of chapter 44. You're going to have some more references in 45 and 46, as Scott says. Now, I believe in there at some point it is even, the prince is even referred to as David. I think that, well, we'll have to question the assumptions, but here's what I think. That David, the prince, is David is a type of the Messiah. And so David the prince is a reference to the Messiah. Now, let me pull some references here. All in Ezekiel except Jeremiah. There's a Jeremiah and there's a Hosea. Let's try the Hosea 3:5. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord in his goodness in the latter days. I think we would say this reference in Hosea is a reference to the Messiah. Now, Hosea was written hundreds of years after David the king. So either it's a reference to a resurrected David their king, or it's a metaphorical description of the Messiah. If we come over here and open Acts chapter 1, is it verse 6 perhaps? Yeah. Here in verse 6, their last question, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? They're looking here for the new kingdom. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say, oh, you mean the kingdom of David? You mean we're going to come to David, our king? When they really are referring to the Messiah? So put a few of those together. Let's see, the first one in Ezekiel 34:23. Let's try that. Coming back over here, let's put it on the right-hand column, Ezekiel 34:23. I will set up one shepherd over them. He shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them as he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God. My servant David, a prince among them, I, the Lord, have spoken it. I think when you put all these together, you're going to say David the prince is the Messiah. Not that King David was the Messiah, but King David was a type of the Messiah. There's probably a few references that you could bring that might even show a millennial role for the actual David. But I think here you're much more, you've got the best argumentation is going to be David the prince is the Messiah. Now, here's what I would want to do, and I would want to do this because this is my principle, my biblical principle, hermeneutical principle. If you can take it literally, do it literally. So then, how can you take these passages literally? Afterward, this is last days in Hosea, Israel will return, seek the Lord and David their king, and shall fear the Lord. Could you take that to say hey, at the last days, people are going to say, we need God and we need David. Yeah, I think you could, Israel. In the sense that, Americans today might be saying, sure would be nice to have Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover with us. That's the kind of guys we need. We're not expecting a resurrection of Cool Cow. But in that sense, okay, yeah, you could take that. But is that what Hosea means? Probably not. Seek the Lord their God and David their king. Probably a little more literal. Ezekiel 34, I, the Lord, will be their God. My servant David, a prince among them. Now, you couldn't use this in the sense of, just longing for David. Because here, David, my servant David, will be a prince among them. Prince is, it's kind of a broader than we use it. It's a leader, a ruler among them. So could you then take a resurrected David? Go through all of those and possibly, you got Ezekiel 34, Ezekiel 37, 24 and 25, Ezekiel 45, 22, Ezekiel 46, verse 4, 12, 16 through 18, Jeremiah 30. These are some of the passages that refer to David the king. Could you take all those and say, I am going to posit a literal David the king, where the literal David is going to be resurrected and he is going to take a kingly role in the Messianic kingdom? Can you do that? You probably could. You'd have to deal with where's the Messiah fit, and why was the Messiah left out of these passages? Maybe you can come up with a good argument. Why do these passages, Ezekiel 37, 45, 46, why do they speak of David and don't speak of the Messiah? Could you ever find a passage in which David and Messiah are together and different people? That would be the clincher. That's what I would want to look for. If you could find that, then maybe you could say, okay, yeah. I think we would have to agree, Scott, I'm sure would agree with me, that you have, but certainly David's going to be resurrected and going to be in the kingdom. So he's there. Seems like he would be kind of prominent. Not just, oh, there's Tom, Dick, Harry, and David. So let's someday let's go at it and try. Try to take every one of those Davids as the literal David. What we will have to deal with is, how come every time David is mentioned, there's no Messiah mentioned? If we have to deal with that. That's what I would want to look for. So could it be that David is figurative for the Messiah? And then if you do that, could we find some other examples that would help support that? Is Messiah called by anybody else's name, or is there any sort of history in Jewish thought of using someone else's name as a substitute? Some of these things we would want to use just as some icing on the cake to strengthen our argument. Excellent question there. Very good. From somebody on the internet who says, why would Ephesians 2, 8 and 9 be about us, but not verse 10? Now, first of all, I would say you have done a marvelous job in recognizing that these are about us. I've got my highlighting messed up here, but those are supposed to be blue letters, not blue highlights. For by grace are ye saved. I think this ye right here is the difference. By grace ye saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it's the gift of God, lest any man should boast. For we are his workmanship. Now, let me say this differently. why would Paul change the pronouns from ye to we? Maybe he's just getting more broad, which you could take if you just started with Ephesians 2:8. You know, I could sometime be talking and say, you are here today asking some biblical questions. You all have some great questions today. We're going to look into our questions. It would be rather seamless. Nobody would ever pick it up. You, our, us, we. If you just had that. The problem is you've got more in Ephesians. So when you say back up in the book of Ephesians, you've got a you. I backed up to Ephesians 2:1. You in times past ye walked, among whom also we had, also we. This is a different people. Because I wouldn't say, you have some great questions, also we have some great questions we're going to ask today. Now, I might say, you have some great questions, we're going to answer them. That would be fine. But that's sticking that word also in there. And this is just starting at chapter 2. You got all of chapter 1. Also, we had our conversation in times past, we were children of wrath, but God, who is rich in mercy, is great love, wherewith he loved us. When we were dead, he raised us up together, that in ages to come. And then he goes back to the ye, and then he goes back to the we and us. And then he says in verse 11, wherefore remember then that ye, being in times past Gentiles in the flesh. Now, ye Gentiles. He kind of defines it there. Uncircumcision. By that which is called the circumcision. Ye Gentiles in the flesh were without Christ, being aliens from the common. See, this ye right here in verse 12 can't be we. Because Paul could not say, we were separated from the commonwealth of Israel. We were strangers of the covenants, having no hope. Because that wouldn't be theologically correct. So if we cannot be just kind of an all-inclusive we in verse 12, then can it be an all-inclusive we in verse 10? I think if you become and you will be ye persnickety on these pronouns, you'll say, yeah, you're right. Verse 10 can't be. I would say the we of verse 10 needs to be the same as, say, the we of verse 14, our piece. Who has made both? Notice he's got both. Who? Who both? You who are circumcision, us who are you who are the uncircumcision, us who are the circumcision. So I think that if you look at this like you would read a contract, you would say, there's too much going for separating these pronouns here. So then, the verse 10, we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works. That is why God created the circumcision. They, the circumcision, the Jews, are his workmanship. They are created unto good works. They are set apart. They are chosen. They are sanctified. Everything lines perfectly to put it with the Jews. But we Gentiles are his workmanship created for good works. Nothing really to support that other than make us feel good and bring a little works into our salvation. So there's my reasoning there. Thank you. Let's see here. It's a busy Monday. We've got an Ephesians 2:3 question, children of wrath, by nature children of wrath, the Kentucky question of the day, the anonymous donor question. Let's see. A question on the Cain study from yesterday having to do with the Book of Enoch. Great question. I am gonna have to look that one up. I'm glad I read that ahead of time. The Matthew 25 question, and I think there we are. Okay, so tomorrow, unless I find Manny's question that I thought I was starting with today, tomorrow we're going to start out with that Ephesians 2:3 question. You were by nature children of wrath, even as the others. This is used to support the sinful nature doctrine. Speaking of, I got my magazine from the IFCA today. I'm somehow on their mailing list. I am not a member of the IFCA, International Fellowship. Independent Fundamental Churches of America, IFCA, Independent Fundamental Churches of America. They have a magazine called The Voice. And the whole thing is on total depravity and why we have to have total depravity. I've only read part of the first article. But even as I read this, I thought, if you go for total depravity, you have to go for Calvinism. There's no other way around it. And sure enough, didn't get halfway through the article, boom, into Calvinism. Gotta have some way to overcome this. I think total depravity is one of these things. The reason we accept it is because creeds told us to. What a difference it would make if we say, I do not give a warm bucket of spit for a single creed, confession, or catechism, not one, not for a moment. Woo, we just offended every religious person in the world, every seminary professor. So what? Because you same guys who are so offended by saying, I won't give a warm bucket of spit for one of them catechisms and creeds, you will stand there and say, oh, nothing but the Bible is Scripture alone. That's it. Sola Scriptura. As long as it goes by the Westminster Confession. Sola Scriptura. Now, I just say Sola Scriptura. Don't need the commentary. I don't need the book. I don't need I don't need Calvin on it. I don't need the Council of Chalcedon. None of that. Let's just go what the book says. I think the only reason that total depravity is even a thing is because we had a love affair with creeds. That's my opinion. But let's get into this. We're by nature children of wrath. Is that a total depravity thing? Is that a sinful nature thing? Let's get into that tomorrow at 10 a.m. And see, one of Nancy's questions lost too. Stay tuned. Well, don't stay tuned right now. I'm leaving, but let's check and see if maybe a refresh or something will bring that back up there with Cain and Abel question from Nancy. I'll look for those. I'll go back. I'm pretty sure I can back up on this thing. Okay. Thank you all for being here today on Ask the Theologian. I appreciate it. You can submit your questions 24 hours a day. AskTheTheologian.com. You can find our teaching at worshify.com or at YouTube/Randy White, YouTube.com/Randy White, or RandyWhiteMinistries.org, where there's a little donate button, and we always appreciate that. Thank you very much. And God bless each one of you, and we will see you in the morning. Take care.